Hi, thanks for joining us today. I'm Craig Berson, the Berson Sokol Agency, and thank you for your business. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of trusts and wills and life insurance and how they all combine with one another. Today we'll be interviewing a good friend of mine and one of our trusted advisors, Lindsey Smith from the Cavitch law firm.
Greg, thanks for including me this morning. I'm glad you started by saying that we're friends. That's
Yes.
a good place to start. We are friends. I'm chair of Cavitch Estate Business Planning Group. We have a very large practice in this area, and we do lots of work with insurance advisors throughout northeastern Ohio.
So let me start off with a little example of why we're doing this. And we see thousands of life policies that are brokered through our office each and every year. And quite often, a young couple names their young children as beneficiary. And the issues that I see with that is that if you name a 4 or 6-year-old as a beneficiary, they can't get to a bank. They don't know what a bank is. It's got to be an UGMA account if they're under 18. There's lots of issues with that. Or they name their spouse as 100% beneficiary. And there's issues with that too. Lindsey, could you educate the public on a couple of the issues that arise?
Yeah. So let's take an example. We have a young couple, let's say they're in their early 30s. For this example, I'll assume that the husband's the breadwinner. Of course, we have it both ways. And they got a couple small children. So what we frequently see is the husband or the spouse, or the wife, if she's the breadwinner, has a large policy to protect against income loss if something happens to that person. They'll name the spouse to be the beneficiary. There's nothing wrong with that by itself, but what we prefer is that we set up a trust to be the beneficiary. And using an example, the husband that sets up the trust, the beneficiary of the policy is the trust, and the husband and wife are the trustees. So here's one of the benefits. Now, when I say a trust, think of a trust as a set of instructions. I'm sure you're familiar with a trust somewhat. So the trust has this set of instructions. The husband disappears, the death benefit's paid in, the wife is the trustee, she manages the money. Why in a trust? Well, one thing is asset protection planning. We talked about a younger couple. Well, let's say later on that spouse gets remarried. The property in the trust is not marital property. That's guaranteed if you set the trust up correctly. It is not marital property.
Lindsey, could you elaborate a little bit on the difference of a will and a trust and final papers that every couple should have in their plan?
Yes. As I said a little bit ago, a trust is a set of instructions. It's like having your own private business. It provides all the rules, including you have a rule that says, okay, the surviving spouse, let's say it's the wife, dies, the trust says, okay, now hold it for the children. And so let's say there's 2 children. There's a rule that says divide into shares, 1 for each of the kids. Let's say one of the kids has special needs, we plan for that. Who's going to be the successor trustee? We plan for that. By comparison, if you just have a will, you go through probate and you cannot get all the benefits I'm talking about today. Yes, there are expenses for probate, but really the reason you want to do a trust-based estate plan has little to do with avoiding probate, has a lot to do with protecting families for the long term.
A potential example is a young couple named their 4 and 6-year-old as contingent beneficiaries. And the wife is driving down the street one day and she's having an issue with the kids. Bobby and Julie are fighting one another, and she turns around and swats him and says, "You stop that." And with that, she takes her eyes off of the road and runs over a kid, unfortunately. And that money was put into an account with an advisor, and that account is in the spouse's name. That's the first money the attorney's going to go after. Am I correct?
Yes. So the account owned by the spouse in your example is an asset that a creditor can take. However, if you set up a trust properly, it cannot be attached by a creditor. So the way I describe it is, something happens to the one spouse who's insured, money goes into this trust account, the surviving spouse is in charge, it's there for him or her and the kids, but nobody can touch it. We have in Ohio and many other states, we have what we call asset protection clauses. A creditor cannot touch the money. So it's protected not just in case there's a subsequent marriage, but also there's a bad driving decision, a bad business decision, calamitous healthcare costs, things like that.
And Lindsey, what are the other documents each and every couple should have in their estate plan?
Okay, so to give you the bigger picture, a trust is the centerpiece document that drives everything. We still do wills. You still have a will with a trust-based estate plan. The reason for that has to do with if you forgot to title something to go into the trust, you have to open up an estate, have an executor appointed. That gives them the authority to pour the assets into the trust. That's why we call them pour over wills. We also do financial powers of attorney, healthcare powers, and living wills. The goal is to have all the documents in place so that family matters can be managed privately, and as I like that joke, keep you out of the legal system.
And Lindsey, give me a rough idea what those costs would be.
Well, for a younger family, we do all those on a fixed fee basis because we know what needs to be done. Typically, those costs are between $1,500 and $2,000. So it's not expensive. Once it's set up, it actually has a lot of shelf life. So let's say 2 years later, they have another child. I tell them, you don't need to redo the trust. We've already accounted for that because the trust adjusts for the number of children that you may have. So I tell clients, go have all the kids you want.
If a young family does not want to spend or cannot afford to spend the additional money for that will, trust, and estate, we have another option called the Poor Man's Trust, where we can literally schedule the death benefit out over a number of years, and that's done with the owner when they buy the policy, the person buying the policy. Doing so can also reduce the cost of the life insurance, the premium, which works very, very well on a rated up case. Thank you so much today, Lindsey, for your time and advice. It's a pleasure having you here.
Well, thanks for including me. I appreciate it.